Welcome to the channel. In this video, we're going to talk a little bit about CleanSpark and Bitcoin. We're going to talk about the daily chart, the weekly chart. We'll also take a look at the open options interest for CleanSpark, not for Bitcoin though. And then we'll talk about price targets on both of them, talk about when I'm going to add, when I'm going to trim. We'll have a quick look at some news. I don't think there's too much news out whilst I was away, so we'll talk about some other topics if there's no news available, and we'll take a quick look at what's coming up on the macro calendar. Other than that, you can check out my live portfolio over on eToro. The link for that is in the description down below. I'm just going to check up my portfolio progress for year to date here. 26.98%. Hopefully I'm ending the year a lot stronger than that, but that remains to be seen yet. And 2 years is 95.71%. So pretty happy with my overall progress in the last few years. Moving straight onto the daily chart for CleanSpark here. I do think this one's going to have a volcanic move at some point. I don't think the main chunk of the move is going to come until Bitcoin breaks from its flag trend pattern. I'll show you that when we talk about Bitcoin after CleanSpark. But for the most part, I'm expecting miners to just kind of trundle along a little bit. There's a lot of fears about dilution and is the timing right and tedious, but it's how miners grow. So, and they're growing very fast, very aggressively. So it's very dog eat dog business. I'm confident with the companies I've picked to win. So CleanSpark, Cypher, I think Bitfarm will do fairly well. Iron's a bit of an unknown for me. It's a bit of a gamble on the AI thesis there, but I would rather own more Palantir, but Palantir has just become too expensive for me to justify holding that. So I'm waiting for a pullback on that one as well. I have got sidetracked though, so let's get back to CleanSpark. So once we get over the $11 kind of range, we should be able to move pretty fast through the air gap to $16-ish. I think that's going to be about 61% return, so that's pretty good. I'll probably take a little bit of risk off at that point. I would expect a more considerable pullback, so it makes sense to de-risk. The gap above does look like it wants to fill. That closes at $13.26, so I'd expect some hesitation there in the short term as well. But for the most part, miners are pulling back in the pre-market, which is good. We took a bunch of profits on Cypher and MicroStrategy last week, so I've got some dry powder that I'm happy to redeploy. When we look at Bitcoin, I'll talk about why I think price is going to cool off a little bit, and for the most part I think it has today. It might not carry through, but generally at these levels is where I want to de-risk. I want to take some profit off the table and have it set aside, and if it runs, it runs. I just don't make as much money, but that's how I like to do it. It just helps me psychologically manage my risk. I am a volatile trader because I'm in a much smaller focused selection of stocks, and some of them are very volatile. Tesla is a good example of that. That's very choppy. I think eToro gives that quite a large risk score as well. Other than that though, targets for this one. So my end target for this one, it depends a lot what happens with Bitcoin. If Bitcoin has a very large parabolic move, we could see this asset get over $100. Now, I don't necessarily think that's going to happen, but even so, most of my position would be closed out at around $45, at least taking a large part of that. That does give me a lot of return. Let me just check the percentages on that. So up to 45, where I've got a fib line. So that would be a 345% return. Will I be leaving some off the table, some on the table if I'm closing my positions before it gets to 100? If it gets to 100, yes, but better safe than sorry with assets like this. They can fluctuate wildly, very aggressively, and you don't want to be caught short on that. So take profits where you can on these. Don't be in them for long term. They will probably crash 90% after the peak of Bitcoin. I talk about it all the time. I'd rather catch the meat of a move than worry about timing the exact top and the exact bottom. And then I'm going to layer in and out in the middle of those moves to make up for the losses and de-risk when it starts to get extended. And I'll take that money and put it into other assets that haven't run yet, I'll just kind of holding steady, or I'm going to wait for a pullback and re-enter if it's at good levels. That's just how I like to do it. But yeah, for the most part, I think this is going to be a 2 to 3x multiplier of Bitcoin. It doesn't have to pan out like that. It's not my only bet. And but personally, I've already done very well on this. Most of my position on this is paid for. I've taken a lot of profit on this one. Some of my positions that I closed last year were up to over 200%. So I'm happy to let this one run. Am I going to be buying more? Yeah, I might do. If we break down closer to that $7 range again, I might buy some more. I'd like to keep that slightly overweight in my portfolio whilst it's running low. I don't expect price to get too much lower than that, but on the other side, we've already talked about my trimming at about $45. I'd probably trim out a little bit at that golden Fibonacci level at about $28.72 as well, just to rotate some cash around, share the love, as it were. But other than that, the RSI and the daily is neutral. We still have the active death cross. It looks like it wants to come together a bit, but that's more likely going to happen when we confirm the reversal. I don't really like to call that a higher high because it's very flat, but we'll see. Other than that, though, flow is getting where it needs to be, but it's still looking a bit negative. A third golden bar here, though, on the flow indicator would be very nice. Generally, that's very bullish when that happens. Moving on to the weekly CleanSpark chart, that looks like a pretty nice monster cup and handle pattern. Fairly clean one as well, so I'd expect this one to actually happen. Just to get back to the neckline, there would be a 104-ish% return, so not bad. I would say the chances of that happening are 100%. But a break of the neckline would get us to a previously marked take profit that I have on my chart, which lines up roughly about $43. So that's very close to the area where I want to be taking out most of my position. So we like confluence, and if we can find confluence for our take profit plans and ads, that is excellent. That makes me feel really confident. That would be around a 320% return if that measured move happened as expected. So that lines up with what we're thinking on our take profit plan as well. So I think as well, what makes me really confident in this pattern is that it's taken multiple years to form and play out. Generally speaking, the longer something takes, the more violent the flip side is. So we've had this long black trend line trending down here. That was a few years, I think. When was that? That was started in 2021 to 2022 to 20. Yeah, 2 years, pretty much bang on 2 years for that to happen. And then we've had another year on the flip side, just basing it. And then we've had this kind of the unusual pump up to $18, which I didn't think we'd be getting that high that fast, but it helped me get a lot of money in the bank. Other than that, though, on the chart, RSI's got plenty of room for more upside if it wants to run. The golden cross is looking like it's gonna flip into a death cross. I'd like not to see that play out. I'd like to see things start to pick up for the miners, but like we've talked about earlier, we really need Bitcoin to charge the way here, and I'm not expecting the miners to be too productive whilst we're not making new highs. Aside from that, I mean, they're going to pop on their own individual news nuggets, like MicroStrategy is going to pop when they buy Bitcoin because people love it. Other than that, though, flow's flat. Kind of negative. It looks like it wants to flip, but hasn't happened yet. I'd like to see some green bars on flow. Open options interest for CleanSpark. The strikes for this week are $10. We've hit that already, and we're kind of pulling back pre-market. So that's going to be a resistance to break in the shorter term. If nothing else drives the price of Bitcoin higher. Above that, though, we've got the $11 resistance. Now, that's a little bit higher than I would have thought to see it. it's a bit higher than the gap fill, but I think a lot of people are going to be looking at the historical resistance here and the support provided back here as well. So I can see why that area is kind of favored. But let's take a look for the week after. Again, price is moving up a little bit. There's definitely the expectation that this one is going up. So we have some confluence with our thesis there that more upside is definitely likely. But like we've talked about earlier, that's going to depend a lot on the rest of the macro and crypto. Liquidity is coming up though, so we like that. The money printer is going, and it's certainly going in China. For the week after, we really start to ramp up here to the $20 range. Now, we've looked at that on the regular chart on the daily. That does line up with kind of the peaks of the top here, 1, 2, 3, 4, and it's in a really good area. I definitely would expect to see a pullback there. My inclination would be a pullback would be quite considerable back down to this kind of 16 area, but that doesn't have to happen. I think when this goes, it's really going to go. It's going to give people whiplash. It has shown that it's got that capability back here. If we scroll onto the chart, the last monster rally we had, we got 133% in 6 trading days. So just bear that in mind. When this one goes, it can be massive. Just going to look to what's happening January 2025. Bullish for the most part, but everyone's picking out random crap, so wouldn't really rely on that too much. Now I'd expect the downside to start happening in 2026, but people still looking pretty bullish on this. I mean, I definitely would not be in options for those dates on this one, so just bear that in mind. I'm a little bit out of the loop this week on CleanSpark news. I've been on holiday and I've really tried to unplug this time. I've made a couple of posts and I've monitored my portfolio. The main thing I did was I just managed my portfolio. I just kept on slightly on top of things, but I'm just catching up now. It's my first day really back sitting in my office at home, catching up with stuff. I couldn't find too much CleanSpark news, definitely nothing that would really impact my decisions. So I thought I'd just talk a little bit about other miners for a change, because I do hold other ones. I'm just not as confident in them. The rising tide will lift all boats, and a couple of them have got slightly different reasons for why I'm in them. And also, it's good to diversify. If you're going to have a large exposure to something, at least diversify within that kind of sector. So I did trim quite a bit of Cypher. It did have some huge moves. I'm expecting that one to pull back. It is pulling back pre-market, if I just quickly check. Cypher. So we've got a good pullback on this one, actually. It's 10% down, so I'm probably going to be buying a bit more of what I've sold on that one, so that's perfect timing on that one. Ideally, I would like it to go as low as filling that gap down to $3.50. That's kind of the level I've marked out. I didn't put a line on the picture here, but the purple arrow is pointing to where I'd ideally like to buy, but I'll nibble all the way down and rescale back into my position. That way, if it doesn't quite get to where I think it's going to go, then at least I've been able to scale back in somewhat. And I'm not going to be bothered too much about a couple of percent being underweight, but I think I'm going to be able to get in back to my max size on that one. And other than that, though, we also trimmed out MicroStrategy. Now, that's had a monster run up, so I've been pretty impressed with that one. Obviously, he's been back to buying all the coins under the sun. So pre-market, we did initially fill this little gap here, which is kind of where I have a different picture on a different chart that I'm working with, but the area I'm looking at to rescale in at that one's about $167. It's currently at just a smidge higher than that, so I'll be scaling back into that one as well. I would like to see a little bit more downside on that one though, because we have come up from the low to the high there. That was 52% plus in 14 trading days, so that's why I took risk off. Now the market is opening, so I'm just going to quickly edit this video so I can actually make my trades. Now, I started doing this video last night, and what I wanted to talk about was that I expected Bitcoin's going to have a bit of a pullback here, a bit of a cool off, come down to this bull market band. So today's price action, it's come down quite a bit. So we're down 2.47% on the day. Now I think we could actually see quite a bit more downside on this one. I think we could break below the bull market band and get back down to this golden Fibonacci level at about 58k. That doesn't have to happen, but that would be my expectation. I would obviously prefer for it to stay above the bull market band and kind of just chop around sideways, but even so, the miners will likely have a bit of a cool off based on this. But I think it gets exciting when we start really pushing up against that level. I thought we were going to break it back here when we had all this kind of support confluence, but we also had a lot of resistance, so it was 50-50 kind of chance there. This one, we do have some good support under us. We've got this volume here and the bull market band, but really, if we do time this right, we could get quite comfortably out of this pattern, and the measured move for that gets us to about 78k pretty easily, and the flagpole or whatever you want to call it for that gets us well up, pretty much bang on to 100k, so that would be a beautiful pattern measured move. But we'll see. The RSI has cooled off a bit, so there is room for us to just chop around. I mean, that's the main thing. I don't want the RSI to get too hot straight away. I'd rather, grind around here and build up some energy so we can really break out this pattern rather than having a false breakout. That's not what anyone wants to see. The golden cross, very active though, and flow's been pretty good. So I think for the most part, it's a very strong pattern. I'm very happy. I'm excited. I'm starting to get very excited about my crypto kind of exposure. I'm quite heavily onto DeFi as well, so this is a very exciting time for me. This is the kind of crunch time that I've been waiting 3 years for. So fingers crossed it's finally happening, because I know a lot of people are getting bored, but if they want to sell me some cheap bits and bobs, I'm gladly buying. Now, it's Monday today, so there's no macro data to digest from yesterday, which is nice. So that makes it quite nice and chill. Data today, though, we do have some PMI locale-specific data. Not too interested in that, really. I mean, the market's going to want to see some good numbers, so as long as we're better than forecast, it'll be good. That's out soon, in 5 minutes. Manufacturing, again, manufacturing's a bit of a dark spot on the economy. It's mainly service driven. We talk about it all the time. I think manufacturing could get a lot better over the coming years as things start to come back to the US, but for the most part, that's all offshore anyway, so we don't need to worry too much about it. But other than that, though, not much exciting on Monday. Tuesday, though, we do have the ISM PMI data. The market does like to read that, even though I'm not super jazzed about it. The jolts, that one's going to be one to watch. The market will pay attention to that one. More manufacturing, more jobs data. So we do have some Dallas services data as well, so I'd pay attention to that one. A load of boring speeches. A lot of boring speeches. I probably won't listen to many of those, to be honest. I think JP's talking. JP's talking today. I will try and be online for that one, but I think I've got yoga, so maybe I'll have to catch up with it when I get back. I need to check what's on the schedule for today. All right, I'm quite aware that I've probably rushed through some of the charts on this one. I'm still catching up with myself from my holiday, so hopefully videos later in the week will be a little bit more concise, a little bit less rushed, and I will have caught up with all the information. But if you have any questions or you want to catch up, just drop them in the comments section. Other than that, like the video, share with your buddies, and subscribe to my channel, and I'll see you tomorrow for Tesla Tuesday. Yay!